Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, partners, and welcome back to yet another exciting and very inspiring session. Welcome to the second part of the conference on the European Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy, live from the French Pavilion at Expo 2020 Dubai. My name is Mariam Farag, and I will be moderating the next two panels. It is my utmost pleasure because we will talk more about projects that are on ground. It is my great pleasure to welcome with us the three inspiring panelists who will be presenting innovative R&I projects and policy initiatives and programs worldwide that support the transition towards sustainable food systems from farm to fork. Our discussion has led us to go through the challenges and the opportunities of the transition to sustainable food systems, thanks to the distinguished opening interventions of this conference today. We then looked into the future key research and innovations, priorities that can help us address the challenges and seize these opportunities. We have also discussed how to best implement R&I priorities to maximize the impacts on the ground. We also addressed the role of youth when it comes to the R&I and the sustainability of farm to fork. Now it is time to go one step further to discuss what is done today on ground. Hence, I'm delighted to have on stage researchers, practitioners, and policymakers who will showcase to us the projects and policy initiatives and programs that are currently delivering on the global transition to sustainable food future. But before that, I would like to remind everyone that we have interpretation available in French and English. We have with us this afternoon to present their innovative projects and initiatives, Roger Schultz. Professor Dr. Roger chairs the Farming Systems Ecology Group of Wageningen University, and I think I just butchered the word, which focuses on the design of farming systems and foodscapes that are ready for the sustainability challenges of 2050. Roger has 25 years experience on the interface of science, practice, and policy making on agriculture sustainability in Ireland, Europe, and internationally. Welcome, Roger. Please welcome to the stage. Next we have Mr. Nicolas Tinois, is working in the bioeconomy department of the project management, Gulich, a funding agency commissioned by the German Federal Ministry for Education and Research. After coordinating a European research area network on sustainable agriculture for food and non-food systems, he was sent for an 18-month mission to the German Federal Ministry for Food and Agriculture until end of last month. There he took the chairmanship, together with co-chairs from Denmark and Spain, of the newly created strategic working group on agroecology under the Standing Committee on Agriculture and Research. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Nicolas Tinois. Next, we have Mr. Omar Amawi, is Senior Manager and expert in the fields of scientific projects management and building strategic partnerships, with more than 15 years of experience in the fields of science, technology, and innovation, policies development, planning, implementation, and support, international cooperation, and building strategic networks and partnerships, commercialization. Omar is currently the Deputy Director of Prima Foundation and has represented Jordan in the General Assembly and contributed actively to drafting of the strategic research and innovation agenda of the program. Please welcome to the stage. Pleasure to have you all today. So to start off the discussion today and for the first round of questions, let us start with round of presentations, because we want to understand more on what is happening on ground and how can we break the the challenges of lost in translation, as the first panel rightfully so put it. Some say the European Green Deal and Farm to Fork strategy are mission impossible. And for us, we would not like the impossible part. Our next speaker, Roger Schultz, will show that actually nothing is impossible with RNI. So in addition to chairing as professor of Farming Systems Ecology Group in Wageningen University, again, oh my God, he is the director of the global network of lighthouse farms. I dare to say that he is a real ambassador crossing the borders between science and practice. In his role, he works closely with farmers that have decided to put sustainability at the heart of their production systems. Mr. Roger, can you present to us the global network of lighthouse farms and showcase some examples of such innovative farms from around the world? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Miriam. I like that challenge. Mission impossible. Can we have the, there we go, presentation. I think it's clear from the first panel of speakers that actually the first part we already agree on. We already agree on what needs to be done. And we already agree on where we'd like to end up. What we all want the same: a prosperous, productive agricultural sector across the globe that at the same time doesn't eat into the resources of our planet, but stays within planetary boundaries. The challenge, that mission impossible, is how to get there. And that is where we are debating, where we are discussing, where we are searching. I work for Wageningen University and Research, which you pronounced very well.
Thank you.
And we've devoted the entire university to finding those answers, from soil scientists to social scientists, to make tools, to make models, to make visions of the futures we want. But what if amongst the 1 billion farmers around the world, there are those who have already found solutions, who have already reinvented themselves, redesigned themselves, and found a new way of farming that is ready for the challenges of 2050. Now, we've traveled around the world and we've brought those farmers together in what we call the global network of lighthouse farms. And we call them lighthouse farmers because they are like beacons on the horizons, illuminating pathways for others to follow. Let me introduce you briefly to 4 of these to show their diversity. We'll start close to home, in the Netherlands. Here, very close to Amsterdam, a company called Earth practices what we call strip cropping, where they grow their crops in strips rather than in monoculture blocks. Same crops, same total area on the farm, different spatial configuration. Why would we do that? Well, think of it, if a disease or a pest enters a field, a big monoculture field, it can spread in 4 directions. You get a quadratic increase of the disease. If it lands in a strip, it can only spread in 1 dimension. And you get a linear increase of the disease. And that difference, that can amount to a few weeks of difference that make the difference between a profit and a loss for example, a potato farmer. And thanks to our European projects, such as Diver Impacts, this is now not only theory, but also we've been able to support that with the data. From arable to livestock. Let's move to Ireland. Here we work with a company called Devonish Nutrition on producing sustainable beef, creating sustainable beef production systems, indeed, from soil to society. Now, beef has found itself in the spotlight for its impact on greenhouse gas emissions, but also on human health. But together, we're trying to turn this debate on its head. Can we design beef production systems that contribute positively to human health and positively to the environment? And with funding from the Industrial Training Network, we have 5 PhD candidates that are trying to design this. And I'm delighted that we have one of them here with us, Jane Shackleton, in the audience, together with Connie, the program manager. We don't just work with European farms. We're the global network. So here in this example from Brazil, where we work with Sao Paulo University and Rhizoma Agro, where we're recreating the Atlantic rainforest, 80% of which is lost. But this time we're recreating it not with natural species, but with food crops, but the same structure, the same ecological processes, the same ecosystem services. And finally, I'd like to emphasize we're not just working with farming systems, we're working with farmers. If we want a future for sustainable farming systems, then we need to think about our future farmers. And here we work with our lighthouse farm in Spain, La Jonquera, that focuses on the regeneration of land that is being desertified, but also the rejuvenation of the farming community. And here we work with the Regeneration Academy that is training the farmers of tomorrow, but also the policymakers of tomorrow, the food industry of tomorrow, and all the actors that we need, as we heard in the previous panel, to work together on these better futures. These are just 4 examples out of many. And it is obvious that we're not looking for one solution. We're looking for a diversity of solutions for different climates, different contexts, different diets, different cultures, different commodities. And together, the Lighthouse Farm show this diversity of solutions, that it can be done, that they have turned mission impossible into mission achieved. With a different focus, each of them with their own approach to sustainability. Regenerative, climate smart, organic, non-organic, nutrition sensitive, a diversity of skills, from very large scale farms that produce food for a lot of people to smallholder communities in Indonesia and Ethiopia. And diversity of gender. Some are female-led, some are male-led, some are led by both. Finally, each of the farms has created its network itself, because these farmers have figured out that they too couldn't have made that transition by themselves on their own. They needed all the partners they could find. Together, we're bringing all these people together, and we have a chance of creating that future we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This was very insightful because it shows how globally we can work together. And I believe this is the aim of this conference, and this is the aim of the strategy, because as the kind lady in the audience did mention, that there are resources. It's just that we are not distributing them wisely or equally. I will have follow-up questions after we have all the presentations, and I would like you to join us here on the panel. Thank you very much. Now we would like to go to our next speaker, Mr. Tinwa. You are the chair of the SCAR Agroecology, which stands for Standing Committee on Agriculture Research, Strategic Working Group on Agroecology. You are also putting a lot of efforts into preparing an research and innovation partnership under Horizon Europe on accelerating farming systems transition, agroecology living labs, and research infrastructures. This is one of the key R&I initiatives outlined in the Farm to Fork strategy. We are now very much looking forward to hearing your presentation on living laboratories that in fact has been inspired by the Canadians. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Farag, and thank you to the organizer for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to present you this upcoming partnership. This is a partnership which has not started yet. We are in the course of developing it and preparing the research priorities and how all this will work, because we have heard about the complexity of the challenges we are facing, and we need some good preparation in order to tackle these challenges. And so this partnership is aiming at accelerating the transition towards sustainable farming practices. I am one of the co-chairs, together with Denmark and Spain, of this SCAR Strategic Working Group on Agroecology. SCAR is a forum, let's say, of member states, associated countries, agreeing on research policy issues about agriculture, and to discuss with the Commission. And so this is the idea behind this strategic working group, is to try to pull the member states together to fund this future partnership. So partnerships, you might have heard in the past about ERANETs or EJPs. In nowadays Horizon Europe, we have heard the Commission this morning mentioning this keyword of Horizon Europe. There will be larger partnerships, and in particular the one we are speaking about. Here you have a list of partnerships in the Cluster 6, which was also mentioned this earlier afternoon, on food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture and environment. So that's the Cluster 6 part of Horizon Europe. And you can see the topics of digitalization, animals, biodiversity, blue economy, for examples. So why a partnership on agroecology? Well, actually, you can see here some policy priorities, targets, and this partnership is clearly dealing with the Green Deal priorities, in particular those from the Farm to Fork strategy, but also from the biodiversity strategy. Those two aspects are definitely linked, we must say. We are also referring to the Common Agricultural Policy, so there are some aspects we consider in there, and the Organic Action Plan, for example. This is a particular added value of this specific partnership compared to other. It is addressing a lot of policy priorities. You can see here, I mentioned you already what is this SCAR Strategic Working Group. I just have a map of the membership, and you can see here we have observers, and we have also very much working with those key advisors. You can see on the top left, that's 3 EU-funded projects and the Joint Programming Initiative, FATSA, JPI, and Agriculture, Food Security, and Climate Change. I'm not going to go in detail on that slide because it's a little bit complicated. Just telling you on the left, you have the so-called 5 levels of agroecology transition, and the idea is to reach as high as possible in this scale, let's say, because a full transition to agroecology means coming at the top there. We are focusing more on the primary production aspect, but we cannot ignore the entire value chain. If we have products from the agroecology, we want them also to be accepted by the consumer and to be also affordable, let's say. We have decided not to make a new definition of agroecology. We heard earlier the Swiss colleague speaking about agroecology, a thing of hippie. So we decided not to make a new definition, but we have agreed on these common guidelines. I will not mention all of them. You will have the slides anyway afterwards. But these are common guidelines we are adhering to in order to work further in our partnership. We have developed in particular, so that's more important for us, an intervention logic with a very long-term vision for 2050. So teaming up and unlocking the transition to agroecology with more midterm, so long-term objectives here, that's the general objectives, and the specific objectives are midterm objectives. So it's a path, let's say, towards our vision. We must say we have plenty of initiatives around there we want to work with. We will hear later on about the mission soil. It's one of the aspects of the initiatives we want to work with, because they also are going to have living labs. So the living labs, so on the top left you have here the key elements coming from the European network of living labs. There is an active user involvement. It's a multi-stakeholder and multi-method approach. It's a real-life setting environment also, and it's about co-creation. Agroecology living labs have some unique, let's say, features in terms of a very strong local embeddedness, the large diversity of origins, and heterogeneity and intensity of knowledge and innovations which are needed. Research infrastructures can play a role also. I don't have added them here, but they can be complementary to the living labs, and both together they could be efficient instrument in order to accelerate the agroecology transition. I'm not going in depth on that slide. We have some research and innovation opportunities, but it's still provisional list here. We are developing right now the research agenda, strategic research and innovation agenda. I want to mention in particular at the bottom the systemic approaches. We heard about it earlier today. We need business models for agroecology, and we need also to raise the demand for products from agroecology. Here you have some potential research and innovation topics. Again, I'm not going in depth. You can see there are some things about digitalization, some about recovery of soil functions. We heard about carbon farming a little bit earlier. So all this I heard just before, it fits all in our partnership. I think it's very promising what I all heard. And how do we want to implement that? There are examples here. One main I would like to mention is this European network of living labs and research infrastructure. We want to have such a European network of such agroecology structures, living labs and research infrastructure, which can exchange on the best practices and how to work. Of course, we need to take into account the diversity of local conditions, cultural, etc., etc. But there will be some commonalities among them. And also, at the bottom, international cooperation will be crucial for us. So the FAO, we heard about it today, and Canada, you mentioned it, FNSSA. This will be all infrastructures we want to work with. This is my last slide, just showing you where we are. We are in the development of the strategic research and innovation agenda. There will be a wide consultation in order to develop this 3-year. And normally the partnership starts end of next year, beginning of 2024 for 7 years. So it's a long-term initiative with an ambitious budget, and I think it is good that we have now long-term projects to improve the agricultural systems. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm here for your questions.
Thank you very much. The key word that I keep hearing is partnership, and I believe that Goal 17 is really taking center stage on this panel. In fact, I believe for the entire farm to fork, without partnership, we cannot really create the impact that we want to see. And speaking about from Europe to the Middle East and information transformation and benchmarking, I would like to welcome Mr. Amawi. You are the Deputy Director of the Partnership for Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean area. It is the most ambitious joint program supported by the EU through Horizon RNI program, undertaken in the frame of Euro-Mediterranean cooperation. It brings together 19 countries. I will not mention all of them, but some of them are non-EU member states: Algeria, Morocco, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Tunisia. I mean, the list is long, and it's quite ambitious to jointly tackle common issues in relation to sustainable agriculture and food systems through RNI. I'm eager to learn about this successful partnership and how can we actually have it as a pilot successful model for others to implement. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mariam. Actually, you covered like half of my presentation, so you made my life easier. Well, so glad to be here in Dubai within these Expo activities under the organization of the European Union, a conference that is fitting perfectly in the goals of this Expo, bringing minds together. And bringing minds together is almost the same as partnership, like you just mentioned. I'm just waiting for my presentation to be loaded. Oh.
The green button.
Oh, here we go.
There we go.
So when we are talking partnership, I mean, there are several partnerships, but when we are talking Prima partnership, it's a kind of unique and different partnership. That's why, that's what I'm going to tell you in the next few slides here. First, as Mariam just mentioned, it's a partnership in the Euro-Mediterranean area. 19 countries are partners within this partnership, 11 from the European Union, and 8 are non-EU countries. Of course, to make a partnership, a true partnership, it has to be on equal footing basis. When we are talking about equal footing basis, meaning that all partners have the same chance to either make decisions, to contribute with funding, or to decide on the activities, and even to manage this partnership. And this is what is being demonstrated perfectly within the PRIMA program. Participating states have contributed about 274 million euros towards the overall budget of the program. And then the European Union put on top of that 220 million euros. That's not including, of course, the participating states from the European Union in the program. So that's in the co-funding aspect. Well, to make this partnership also effective, we have to work on a common basis. We have to address or to tackle common challenges. And when you are talking about 19 countries with different geography and different cultures, different many things, it's really not an easy task to find some joint activities or some joint challenges, or let's say some common priorities between those countries in order to work together on for like a medium-term commitment, which is a 10-year program with 7 years of goals. That's why during the implementation and negotiation phase of the program, which was between 2012 and 2017 when we officially launched the program, we went through a lot of discussions, a lot of negotiation, a lot of agreement and disagreement. The discussions in panel one this afternoon were kind of a sample of what we have been through until we have reached this final agreement of the program. And then we have decided on the strategic research and innovation agenda. That is our reference for the 7 years of the launch of the program, of the goals of the program. The thematic areas that have been identified as common areas to work on were, as you see on this slide, management of water farming systems and agro-food value chain. But of course, in order to have more impact and to capitalize or to enhance the maximize the benefit of our resources, the nexus between those themes is, of course, a more important approach. That's why we are adopting the WIFI, or water, energy, food ecosystems nexus approach within our projects, even within the thematic areas themselves. And we have introduced that efficiently and effectively in our goals. Of course, we have talked about the challenges, and I'm sure that you are all aware, or you know one way or another, about the challenges that we are facing either in the Mediterranean area or even globally. So here is a list of some challenges that we have identified and we agreed on. When I say we, the entire participating countries in the program, the General Assembly, which became afterwards the Board of Trustees, and now we have the Secretariat that is managing the program. Climate change, population growth, water scarcity, agrobiodiversity loss. So all of these problems are there. Unfortunately, in some cases, the severity of these problems was increasing. So it's wise to work together and to put all available resources together in order to try at least to minimize the way these problems and challenges are going. So to tackle these challenges, I think those are some three or the three objectives that we are working on. But under these three objectives, or under these three goals, there are several other objectives or results that are expected. For example, alignment of national R&I programs to reduce fragmentation, to work on or to jointly identify the priorities. Many countries have adjusted and changed their national regulations for funding research and innovation just in order to fit into the regulations of the other countries, in order to expedite the process and to simplify the funding process for the selected projects for funding. Critical mass of actors also, this is something very crucial and has been mentioned several times, and it will be mentioned, and you will be hearing this several times throughout your career if you decide to continue in this community. So this is very important. And strengthening our capacities, of course, with this international dimension of working together makes available so many resources for researchers. On top of that, also funding is very important. Well, in PRIMA, we fund mainly two types of actions. The two main ones, research and innovation actions, and I'm sure that you are familiar with that, and innovation action. Research and innovation leading to some kind of a technology or some kind of a knowledge, and the innovation action that has taken a technology into a higher level, or taken innovation into a higher level with the specified TRLs here. So I will not go through those in detail, but just to give you a flavor about the types of action that we are funding in the PRIMA program, which is, by the way, a very competitive program, and the success rate, unfortunately, is very low, but at least we are trying to provide some opportunities better than nothing. Going through the thematic areas very quickly also, you see the research and innovation priorities that we are addressing, and more clearly they are going in the direction of sustainability and integrated management of resources, either in water management or in farming system or in the agro-food value chain. So I know that I have a limited time here, but I will go to the last slide very quickly here. And just to give you a flavor of what has been achieved so far under the PRIMA program, our first annual work program was launched in 2018, and we have just recently, like a month ago, launched our 5th annual work program. So 4 have been concluded successfully, and 1 still in the pipeline. So the opportunity is there for anybody who's interested to apply for this call. But from the previous 4 calls, we have been able to identify and fund 168 projects with a budget of 225 million euros, around 1,600 beneficiaries, with a success rate 7.7%. This is a global success rate. Unfortunately, it's different between the two sections that we are funding in PRIMA. But this is good to know, but what's also important to highlight that although we are talking about only 168 projects being funded, but more than 1,600 projects were rejected. And many of them, I would say majority of them, were rejected not because of they are not good, but because of lack of funding and the limited resources that we are having in the program. Almost 1,600 beneficiaries, and here we're talking, I'm trying to highlight the importance of networking. 1,600 beneficiaries now currently are working together, but on the other side, more than 18,000 beneficiaries applied within those 1,600 projects and tried together to put some kind of proposal to address a challenge in the Mediterranean. Okay, so you can imagine the amount or the impact that if these 18,000 beneficiaries at least, or if partially worked together, what will be the impact on other or on the challenges that we are trying either through PRIMA or through other programs in the Mediterranean. That's it. This is what I wanted today, or what I'm allowed to say within this time frame. I would like to highlight here that we have a very user-friendly website, and I have the address here. Also, you may follow us on the social media for updates and information about the calls, about the program, and about the activities that we are taking over under the PRIMA program. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. Mr. Amawi, actually, sorry to catch you off guard before I open the Q&A for our audience, because we really need to hear from them and then engage. You mentioned 7.7% success rate, and personally, I would like to understand why. Is this a high number? Is this a low number? And can you enlighten us on why is it, if it's a low number, why do you think that is?
Yeah, well, actually, it's an okay number. Okay, we always aim to make it higher. In section 1, it's about 3%, unfortunately, and in section 2, it's about 14%. So when you go average, considering the number of projects funded, under each section, we ended up with a 7.6%. Why is it low or okay? Because we are receiving a very, very, very large number of applications every year. So let's say in the first call, we have received about 460 applications, and we were able to fund only 9 projects.
Wow.
Due to the limited budget. Of course, at the beginning, we have distributed the funds available, and we have decided a maximum budget for a project, which was about 1 million or 1.5 million. But again, we have to make a balance. Well, we have decided that budget, which is relatively low, because we wanted to fund more projects. But at the end, if you want impact, you need to have larger budgets for the projects. That's why we increased the budget per project, but that decreased the success rate of the program.
Absolutely, thank you. This actually takes me to another question, and I would like to address this question to Roger, but obviously to any of our distinguished speakers present here today. Funding seems to be the challenge when we're talking about from the first panel to the second one, and maybe perhaps even the third one. Funding is always the challenge. And there is a big debate, not just in Europe, but I want to understand more from a European perspective. There is a big debate when it comes to sustainability, environmentally friendly actions, and profitability. How can we measure environmental measurements versus profitability versus cost? Roger, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, thank you. It's indeed a hot debate in Europe at the moment. And I've seen reports that indeed, if you try and change one element of your farming system, then often it is in conflict with profitability if you take one measure. But if we redesign a farming system and do not one thing differently, but many different things differently, then it can work. And Miriam, would you allow me to bring one example into the discussion here? Because we're fortunate that we have Jane here with us. Now, Jane is a third generation female farmer stepping into her mother's and her grandmother's footsteps. But she's also a PhD candidate at our Heartland project, our Irish Lighthouse Farm, where they don't change one thing, they don't just reduce fertilizer input, but they change the system. Jane, could you elaborate for us on that?
Welcome, Jane. And it's inspiring to see female farmers in third generation. This is amazing.
Yeah,
Please
quite
go
unusual.
ahead.
Thanks for the introduction, Rohir. Yeah, I suppose a bit of my background. I'm from a place called Cavan in Ireland, and I'm an organic beef farmer alongside my mother. We've been certified for organic for nearly 30 years now. And I suppose 5 years ago, I went home to farm and was exposed to the challenges that is facing farming in Ireland. We're very much a ruminant-based system, grass-based, but like every sector, facing huge challenges. So I was lucky enough to get the opportunity for a PhD on the Irish Lighthouse Farm, which is the Devilish Lands at Douth. And Horizon 2020 funding came through in our project for which is called the Heartland Project. And my PhD work revolves around interventions such as increasing species diversity in grassland. In Ireland, we've been very much advised to go to high-yielding monoculture grasses, and obviously there's knock-on effects on the environment and profitability as well. As a farmer, I'm acutely aware of profitability, and that we're trying to put science and publishable data behind finding more sustainable and innovative grazing systems. So we have 5 PhD students covering all right from soil right through to society, to the meat that we're producing off these different sward types, and how that will affect human health, and also how that will affect farmers and the implications on their profitability as well. So we're 2 years into the project now, and we've seen really great results in terms of reduction in fertilizer. So we've reduced that back by 60%. We've seen increased animal performance, impacts on animal welfare, and obviously on the soil health side of things as well. So yeah, I suppose that's a quick overview of what we're doing on our project.
It's very interesting. I originally come from Egypt, and I know for a fact that sustainability and environmentally friendly agriculture is very high in cost when it comes to a local farmer in Egypt. And these are the huge challenges. And Mr. Amawi did mention that one of the challenges that you try to combat with an opportunity or a solution is the mass action when it comes to stakeholder or stakeholder engagement, when it comes to public and private sector as well with partnership. And I would like to have a follow-up question for any of our speakers. Mr. Tinwai, you spoke a lot about partnership as well. How can we create mass partnership? How can we get the public to partner with the private sector to raise more funds to actually provide local farmers to take necessary sustainable measures to align with the strategy like the European strategy or the Mediterranean and so on?
Yes, thank you for your question. So there are several aspects. In our partnership in particular, we are thinking about how to raise the amount of money which is expected to be raised to tackle such a large challenge. And in this regard, so it's not, when we are saying that there are funds missing, yeah, the private sector can play a role, but it's also about, there are some investitions which are possible, but which we don't know about. So we are speaking about research aspects, but we are also speaking about innovation. Well, if we want to accelerate a transition, we need to accelerate the transfer of the sustainable practices, of sustainable farming practices into the field. And so there may be some possibilities. So we are speaking about this in the Common Agricultural Policy, so to use these funds, to use the regions have a role to play there. How to involve the private sector, it's always a tricky part, of course, but the point is to have them have a say in the preparation, and right from the beginning. Actually, you cannot just come at the end and tell them, no, it's like that, and please co-finance with us. They need to be involved.
There has to be ownership from the beginning.
There has to be ownership, and not only from the private sector, but also we heard about socio-economic sciences and humanities. You need to take into account the social barriers, the economic barriers, but while not forgetting the environmental, we heard about it. So there are some trade-offs to be paid attention to. You need to take all the actors, all the relevant actors from the beginning on board.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we ran out of time and we have to transition to panel 3, but our panelists and speakers will be available for follow-up questions. Thank you very much to our panelists. It's really, really interesting. And I move to the next speakers. So we welcome our speakers of the third panel of this conference on the European Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy, live from the French Pavilion at Expo 2020. It is with great pleasure that I welcome the 3 inspiring panelists of this conference. Much like the previous panel, the speakers will showcase their innovative R&I projects and policy initiatives worldwide that are acting now to support the transition towards sustainable food systems from farm to fork. I would start with Mrs. Teresa Pinto Correa, is a geographer, full professor at the University of Évora, Portugal. She coordinates a research team on the processes of change in European rural landscapes at multiple scales, dealing with land use systems, their management, as well as tensions and synergies in the transitions between production, consumption, and protection of the countryside. She has a record of more than 120 peer-reviewed publications and multiple international projects. Welcome. Our next speaker is Mrs. Irene Anor Frembong. Welcome. Is a research for development practitioner with over 30 years of rich experience in international research for development practice and territory education. She is the coordinator of H2020 LEAP 4 FNSSA, if I got that correctly, project, and until August 2020 was the Director of Research and Innovation at the Forum for Agriculture Research in Africa. Welcome. Next we have Dr. Abdu Tenkuwanu. I believe, I hope I pronounced that correctly, sir. Is the Executive Director of CORAF, the West and Central Africa Council for Agriculture Research and Development, an international not-for-profit association of national agriculture research and development institutions from 23 countries with headquarters based in Dakar, Senegal. He also is a guest lecturer at the University of, oh boy, that's going to be very, very challenging. Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. Great. Welcome. I would like to start with Mrs. Correa. The EU missions are a novelty of the Horizon Europe Research and Innovation Program for the years 2021-2027. In brief, EU missions are a new way to bring concrete solutions to some of our greatest challenges. They will deliver impact by putting research and innovation into a new role, combined with new forms of governance and collaboration, as well as engaging citizens. That's very, very interesting because it really sums up well with the first panel as well. How can we engage citizens? Mrs. Pinto, you are a member of the mission board for Soil Deal for Europe that aims to create 100 living labs and lighthouses to lead the transition towards healthy soils. We are all keen to learn about this initiative from you. The floor is yours.
Hello everyone, so I'm going to present the soil mission of the 5 missions of the Horizon Europe. And it's exactly as you say, the goal is to change the paradigm of managing our soils by engaging people and engaging all types of people in this change. So the goal of the mission is this one, is that we will have 100 living labs to lead the transition. So the goal is this will be the way, the pathway to have a change in the condition of our soils. And why do we need a mission on soil health? We've talked a lot about living labs. We have talked a lot about making our food systems more sustainable, but the ground for it is, with no doubt, the soil. So we need to change in many different ways, but we need to have better soils. They are the basis for our food system. They deliver these vital ecosystem services, but they are scarce. They are a non-renewable resource, or they take too long to be renewed. And they are threatened. And we are still facing, I just visited last week, an olive farm in Portugal, owned by a very big company who has around 20,000 hectares of olive production, intensive olive production. And we have a younger researcher doing research there. And this year, with very little rain, because it's a very dry year, we had about 20 tons of erosion, soil erosion per hectare. So it's enormous, it's still ongoing. There are many problems which still go on, and we cannot halt it just by continuing not doing something. We need to do something. So the soil mission or the soil deal, it's very much in tune with the Green Deal objectives. There's also a new soil strategy of EU. So there's a lot of alignment, and also about what was said here about the agroecology partnership, about what you are doing. We have been talking about these living labs, but the idea is very much that we need to have a change to halt things which we know are wrong, but are still ongoing, and to recuperate those who are degraded already. So there's a set of objectives which were set in the mission. So the mission board was working for almost 2 years to produce the objectives which were really the most important ones in transferring or transforming our soil. and they are here. But what I would like to say is that, and it was said already before, that if you want to change soil conditions, we need to act with people. So we need to change people behavior, the way people manage their soils. So it's very much focused, due to that, it's very much focused on having a program which has these 4 pillars. And there's a research and innovation program where research questions will be addressed, but it links to people and to a territorial basis in the living labs and lighthouses. But we are mainly focusing on living labs because that's where research is going to take place, driven by questions which are real-world questions. So the research should not stay in the labs, they should go out, or in the labs, in the research centers, it should go out to these living labs and these territorial places, and then it should be followed by a system of monitoring, which is not there. It's there in some countries, but it's not a general one. So we need to have data about how soils are progressing and where the problems are bigger and where actions are really solving problems or getting it better. And then a strong pillar on communication, on citizen engagement, on getting people to know about soils. Soils is really the hidden resource in our knowledge system. Everybody knows, talk about climate. In southern countries, we talk a lot about water, but on soil nobody talks. And I will advise you, all of you, to take a look at the exhibition in the Terra Pavilion, which has a wonderful exhibition. You go into the soil in a forest ecosystem, and it's really enriching for young people to know how lively it is under our soils. So this soil literacy, it's very important, specific for this topic, because there's so little knowledge about this topic. So what are living labs in the understanding of the soil mission? It's very close to what is the agroecology living labs. They are real life place experiments. So it's not one place, it's not one farm, it's a cluster of farms who work together so they can share the innovation, they can share the exchanges, and they share it with researchers. So there's a lot of, we have to co-develop, so we identify needs and outcomes, study how we do it, then test the solutions, and then when we evaluate if it works or not, they will be expanded. So the idea is that there is a virtuous circle. And the question is also that working with multiple partners in one specific territory, there will be also the chance to spread the novelty through the lighthouses, but also just by networking in one territory. So the idea is that living labs are really clusters which are anchored in a territory where the change and the positive results of the change will be spread in this territory and then further apart. So the network of living labs is to be gradually established, and I think here it's very important, it's not written in my slide, but very important that we think about the matching with these other initiatives. So there are living labs already in place, there are living labs paid by projects or paid by regional authorities or by others. They should really come together, so there's co-financing, co-funding of these living labs, so they have a chance to continue in the future and not be depending on the financing which will come from Horizon Europe. So there will be specific criteria defined for what is a living lab, and the engagement with the regional, national stakeholders is very important. And then the idea is to cover different types of land use systems, different types of contexts, of regional contexts, so that really Europe will be covered by these living labs. So the key words are integration of different sciences and different stakeholders, contextualization, so that we define solutions which are fit for the region where they are, system thinking, and equity. So we think about all the factors of the system, connecting, for instance, social sciences with the other ones as seen. So that's what I have to say. Thank you very much. In my slide, there will be also, in my slides, the funding opportunities for research and some useful links. So you can look at them if you need or if you are curious. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Pinto. If you don't mind, I'll add one more to your slide and points, is that communication and storytelling and media for impact is key for us to all understand all of these terminologies. How can we be actually responsible citizens? As a storyteller myself, I would love to tell that story, but to simplify it to the average citizen or the local person. Now we turn to Mrs. Anor Frempong, who is the Director for Research and Innovation at the Forum for Agriculture Research in Africa, and actively involved in the Partnership on Food and Nutrition Security and Sustainable Agriculture EU-Africa FASA, FINSA. The partnership addressed the challenges set out in UN Sustainable Development Goal 2, End Hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture by stimulating joint AU-EU research and innovation activities. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of us. I'm pleased to be given this opportunity to talk about the partnership between Africa and Europe. We've had a lot that's happening on the ground. We've had a lot of issues, and we're talking about systems, talking about food systems, we're talking about research systems, we're talking about innovation systems. And I often say that as soon as you start talking about systems, the way to fix it is looking at the systemic issues. Because once you don't fix the systemic issues, it's unlikely that you'll be able to deal fixing the system. So the long-term Europe-Africa Partnership for Food, Nutrition and Sustainable Agriculture, FNSSA, so the title is LEAP for FNSSA, it's been put up as a decisive action by the European Union and the African Union. Because after decades of, what have I done now? Can we go back to my, do I press the red to go back?
The red button, yes, to go back to the previous slide.
Oh, okay.
I can also assist.
Okay, but how do I advance the slides?
The green button.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do. And it jumps to the next presentation.
Oh, really? Can we have
There's
someone
a systemic problem here.
There's a systemic.
Okay, but let me continue as we fix that. The first thing I wanted to do is to put the Leap for FNSSA in context, why it was important. In fact, for the past couple of decades, Europe has had several engagements with the African Union. In fact, many of the projects we are discussing actually traverse different subject areas and disciplines between Africa and Europe. So the cooperation between Africa and Europe is a very long-standing one, and funding lots and lots of projects involving almost all African countries and many European countries. However, over time, the impact of these projects have not been the best, and I think we've heard from most of us. And the reason that's the case is what has led to this project, the systemic issues around coordination, around ensuring that there is some level of coherence in what we do, ensuring that there is efficiency in putting the project together and deriving priorities that are common to the both continents. So at the 2014 summit, the Joint Africa-Europe summit agreed that they were going to have a strategy to deal with this. And in 2018, they took that action to come up with this project, Leap for FNSSA. I was touching on the systemic issues that have arisen because there is duplication of efforts, fragmentation, weak synergies, and generally lack of coherence among actors across board, and the short-term funding cycle that we have had over the years, which is very difficult to sustain a long-term effort. That these together undermine the efficiency of what we're doing, returns on investments, and also the general impact that we're getting. These are the systemic issues. It's difficult, but it's not unsurmountable. So that's what the African Union and the European Union under the JIS decided to give the mandate to this project to look into how it will be able to solve this problem. And this project is implemented by 35 institutions across Africa and Europe, 20 in Europe and 15 in Africa. And so the mandate of trying to establish a structure or a platform for efficient and coherent implementation of the EU-AU Research and Innovation Partnership And at the heart of it is to help implement the Food Nutrition Security for Sustainable Agriculture program. That's the FNSSA partnership. We're talking of a huge partnership for over 300 projects that come together to help us articulate what this platform that we're talking about. And so four objectives were set to be able to do this, to increase synergies, develop learning environment about knowledge, because knowledge is at the center of this. I had a soundbite from the previous meeting. It says, knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied. If you don't share knowledge, then you don't find more solutions. How do you get the innovative ideas and co-create innovations about knowledge? And establishing a long-term sustainable governance and funding mechanism as the centerpiece of this. The governance is important, that needs to be participated within by all the actors, but the funding mechanism, we talked about redirecting funding flows. We talked about the COSI work of finding nearly 15 billion in arrears, I say it. How do we redirect some funding to ensure that we're tackling some of these systemic issues, but also how do we link up with the policy process? The science policy interface has always been very weak. And so we crisscross in the project. It's organized around 5 work packages, but they crisscross working with each other to deal with these 4 objectives. Time is not on our side, so I'm just jumping to show you the envisaged platform, how we envisage it to look like. The model is being modeled as the International Research Consortium with key functions, 4 functions. The first function, which is at the center, is providing a knowledge system and information and communication agenda that really aims to generate but also disseminate knowledge and underpin a learning environment. Because that's really what we know. A lot is going on, but there is no effort or there is no database that tells us who is doing what, where, with whom, and how you can actually engage. This project is actually doing that. There is a huge database that's taking on board all the FNSSA, put over 300 of them. You go into that database and you will find your way. You will navigate all the projects, who is funding, what's going on, and all that. For you to now know you don't have to duplicate and you know who to engage with. The other piece of it is to ensure that you have the stakeholder dialogues and stakeholder communities, because when we say a platform, we are not saying it's inclusive, but it doesn't mean everything is going to be in one big platform. The platform is to link up with other clusters. We talked about connectedness and interconnectedness. We're putting in systems that this platform will be able to connect to existing clusters, existing networks, existing structures, but also map itself into existing partnerships. Because I can bet there are a lot of partnerships that are trying. We just heard from Prima. This is a great one that you need to build on, you need to link up with. So this second bit is also a great bit. Then the third bit is more about the funding mechanism. How do you get a sustainable long-term funding to drive this agenda? And of course, ensuring that you are always linking back to the policy processes, both at the AU level and EU level, that actually translate down to member states. So this is what this envisaged platform is about, and underpinning that is the continuous learning and capacity building, because of course, if you want to assure equity across board, it must have this continuous learning and capacity development. This slide is to show the benefits that accrue members of the platform. We are foreseeing that if you're a member of the platform as an institution or initiative, it's ensuring your impact, is ensuring that you optimize the utilization of your results. It provides you with great access to knowledge and a great knowledge base, and of course, learning environment. and the recognition and visibility and participation in the governance. You see, most of the time when people talk about trusts in partnerships, is being transparent and knowing what is going on, and also participating in how you're governed and how the coordination is about. So it's that participation that is crucial for us here. And the criteria for being on the platform or modeling the platform is that it's bicontinental, operationally it's provide the necessary information and interactions and connections, and it is inclusive. In fact, we've heard about inclusivity in one of the World Economic Forum, one of the, they call it future-proof system aspiration is about inclusiveness. That you should make that an important aspiration. So this, the last or so slide, that's a summary of what we have done to date. We've talked about earlier projects that the AU and EU had worked on and where we have learned the lessons. Now, in this Live for FNSSA project, we have achieved great milestones. The first one is that we've established a link between projects and the policy processes, particularly with the high-level policy dialogue. We've also defined what partnership projects should be about, and we have the M&E framework to help us with the monitoring. Secondly, we also have another milestone around raising awareness and linking stakeholders. And the list of stakeholders are endless: the decision makers, researchers, funding institutions, agribusiness entities, women, youth, all that. Currently, we have about 130 plus institutions that have expressed interest to join this platform. And indeed, we also have established the database I talked about, over 300 of them, formidable management system tools. But last but not the least, we're talking about long-term. And so the fourth point in the corner there is that we are using a long-term cyclical programming process to ensure that as you move from one cycle of projects, you're able to move to the next cycle. And this cyclical process is actually moving and building community from bottom up. There's one from West Africa, another from North Africa, that's helping us to draft theories of change and impact pathways that we can use to articulate our progress. And also looking at coordination hub, how it should look like, and actually how we link up with other cluster networks. So if you pull all these deliverables, you see that the International Research Consortium formulation is one that is of great flexibility and one that is planned to grow. So it's, as I said, it starts with a nucleus, and as members begin to participate, it grows so that we can be more efficient.
I am really sorry, Mrs.
My last slide.
Anor, I can't. I'm really conscious of time, and we still have another speaker, and we have to wrap up very quickly. But we will be sharing, I'm sure. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was very insightful. And to our next, our last speaker, Mr. Ten Kuana. You are the last to present, so we're looking forward to it. And please, you have the stage. And needless to say that we're really conscious of time. Thank you very much, sir.
I know, and I'll try to go very quickly. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I would like to stand on all protocols, but I do want to recognize some of the donors that have supported us through the years, including the Swiss cooperation that has come recently, but has decided to help us deal with one systemic issue, and I'll come to that very quickly. We are in a part of the world where we have multiple disruptors. I don't need to go through them. Armed conflicts are of recent development and concern for all of us. The fact is that they are all interconnected. There is one I have not mentioned here. It's a disruptor that is related to funding. The fact that it's not the amount of funding, it's the fact that we have different sources of funding that are not necessarily coordinated, and are imposing priorities that sometimes may not align with what the needs on ground are. And that's why I want to recognize the Swiss cooperation for having come to say, let's put this together, let's handle that disruptor. So a number of institutions exist in Africa. On the right-hand side, we have the economic commissions, which we are a technical arm of for research and development. On the left-hand side are technical institutions that were set up in response to the crisis related to drought in the early 70s, and we work with all of them. CORAF was created in 1987 because of the recognition that all that existed did not address adequately the issues because they didn't take into account research and innovation. So we decided that the best way to operate was to take wisdom from what was happening. Borderless challenges, the pests and diseases do not know borders, they don't need visa to cross. No country had the full capacity, so it was important that we pull together resources from different countries so that we would have borderless solution. And our framework for collaboration was a continental framework for agricultural development in the continent. So we pulled our resources and we said, we can't do research on everything, everywhere. Let us focus on the most important commodities and let us determine which countries can take the regional leadership on a particular one. Let me not go into details here, but we call them centers of specialization, and that's where we are inviting international expertise. For example, in Senegal, we have the dry cereal one. We needed to develop techniques in molecular breeding, for example. We invited CIRAD, and CORAF paid for a position at CIRAD to come and help develop that expertise. That's one of the things that we do. We have now matched all the CG centers with our centers of specialization as we go into the next phase of development of our infrastructure, and we will have some resources to support that. And finally, we also have worked with universities of the Feed the Future system in the US to match them with all of our centers so that we can work together. The last thing that is unfolding is how to harness European expertise into this system. And I happen to be a visiting professor at KU11 in Belgium, and we have sought how to bring that partnership into being with funding from the EU. Harmonization of processes is heart of what we're doing. If you look at this map, at the bottom, the red means that we were not doing the right thing, and the green meant that we have improved. And that is in harmonizing seed systems, seed regulation, so that seeds can cross easily from one place to another. And we're happy that we're able to do that. Technologies have moved freely from one country to another, but more importantly, when Ebola came, it prevented farmers from going to the fields. And after the health crisis, we would have had a food crisis. Thanks to the system we put in place, we're able to load trucks of seeds from Nigeria coming across up to Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. That's a frame that we think we need to use collectively as we go forward. Let me not talk about the impacts under normal conditions. When we started, only about 10% of land was used with improved seeds. We got to 25%, but that means there is a gap of 75% that offers opportunities for us to work together. Now, COVID came. And COVID showed that even if you have money to import food, food wasn't moving. And we feel that it is opportune for us to revisit the economics of proximity in making our different villages as self-reliant as possible. And the way to do that is also to go back to our local foods. Millet is from West Africa. But when you look at the map, you see the number of processed food from millet. There are not many in Africa. It's mostly elsewhere. How do we get this back is a challenge that I think we need to collectively take up. We think that we can import technology, but not food. And if the technology that we import, we can maintain the diversity of our systems. It's under this framework that the EU came and said, okay, you have a catalog of varieties, but they are old. Can we do something to improve the system so that we have new varieties that are adapted to the climate and to the taste of the people? You will see that we have one project in that area. Let me not go into much detail, but we expect that within a few years we'll be able to rejuvenate our collection of new varieties thanks to the EU funding. And it is a partnership program. Then we learned that pests move across borders. And we put in place a system for mango, for example, that we export to Europe. There were a lot of catchments because they say there are flies, we don't want them in Europe. And when a consignment is seized, we have to pay for the destruction of it. And that's a double waste, a double loss. So we put in place a system collectively that would allow us to have some kind of monitoring and rapid intervention. And as a result of that, we have been able to increase production, reduce catchment, and the increased production is turning into dry mango technology, creating jobs for women. Just one more slide and I will stop there. From that, we have learned that we need to be anticipatory, and thanks to the EU, another project came that helped us to develop a mechanism for molecular diagnostic and surveillance, this time targeting cassava, which is one very important crop. So in May of this year, we inaugurated that center thanks to this funding. And finally, coming together as partners, the different center organizations like IRENES and others who were asked by the EU to come together so that our partnership would be more effective. And I would like to say that we now speak with one voice. Well, there's still some little differences, but thanks to that voice, we were able to persuade the African Development Bank and the International Fund for Agricultural Development to convene a high-level meeting on how to scale innovation. And that took place in April of 2021. And we understand that there has been a pledge up to $17 billion to fund innovation, which is a good result. With this, Madam Moderator, let me skip and just say that we have been focusing so much on solving problems, but unless we build also the anticipation, then we would be always behind. I would like to stop with that and thank you for
Thank you very much.